Namaste, my dear brothers and sisters. The love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you. This morning, we'll talk about a subject that is of interest to everyone, and that is food. No matter whether we live to eat or eat to live, there's one thing which applies to all of us: we can't live without food. I'm not talking of the rare yogis who can live more or less without food, but by and large, for all practical purposes, nobody can live without food, and therefore, it's a subject that's of great interest to everyone. So with that little introduction, I'll go to the slides. So the session is titled Eating Wisely and Well. And we'll talk about the subject in terms of nutrients. Why in terms of nutrients? Is it to make it difficult for those who don't have a good knowledge of chemistry? No, it's not for that reason. It's because it makes the subject very simple. For example, we have a few basic types of yarn: cotton, silk, wool, synthetics, polyester, etc., etc. So, starting with just a few such yarns, we can make a wide variety of cloth, and then we can stitch it, cut it, and stitch it in different styles to get a still wider variety of garments. But the basic yarns remain the same, just a few of them. In the same way, we have a few basic nutrients, and nature has combined them in different proportions, in different combinations in various foods. And then further, we can still cook them and process them in different ways to get a still larger number of recipes. But when it comes to the utilization of by the body, it is in terms of the basic nutrients of which all foods are made, and therefore understanding nutrition in terms of nutrients makes it simple. But same time, we'll keep correlating these nutrients with the real foods as we go along. The traditional functions of food have been considered to be to provide energy. That is, food provides that fuel which gives energy to the body for staying alive as well as for all the other activities that we do. In addition, we need food also for repair of wear and tear. The body is like a machine, the wear and tear is going on all the time. And what we lose through wear and tear, we keep making up through repair, which requires building new material of the same type of which the body is made. And of course, children need it also for growth. So, in a way, repair of wear and tear, which goes on throughout life, and growth, which is more or less confined to childhood and youth, in either of these for either of these requirements, whether it's repair or growth, what we need is food to be utilized for building new material of the type of which our body is made. And that itself is a great miracle, because how little resemblance there is between the food that we eat and what we are made of, what our body looks like. We start with the first nutrient, the carbohydrate, the poor carbohydrate, which sometimes is looked down upon, like the Cinderella. Uh, like Cinderella, I call carbohydrates the Cinderella of nutrition. Uh, Carbohydrates do give us energy, and the amount of energy they give is 4 calories per each gram of carbohydrate that we consume. Uh, the major sources of carbohydrates are the food grains, that is cereals and pulses, and also banana, potato, and to some extent milk. Now, these are all sources of carbohydrates. And how much of carbohydrate do we need? Plenty of it. If a diet supplies 75% of the energy intake in the form of carbohydrate, that's absolutely fine. I'm showing this picture to again emphasize one commonly misunderstood point. That is, when it comes to cereals like wheat and rice and a large variety of millets and pulses, one of the common errors is that cereals and other grains contain a carbohydrate, whereas pulses or legumes or the dals, they contain protein. In fact, both have plenty of carbohydrate. The difference is only one of degree. And you find that if we look at the composition of a typical cereal, it has around 70% by weight. No, when you start with the dry cereal of carbohydrate, 10% protein, and the remaining 20% is water, even in the dry grain. When it comes to pulses, a typical pulse has about 60% by weight of carbohydrate, and carbohydrate in both cases is in the form of starch. Uh, about 20% is protein, and the remaining 20% is water. Although all carbohydrates provide 4 calories per gram, all carbohydrates are not alike. And one comparison, which is of great interest, is that between starch and sugar. Starch is difficult to digest, not difficult really, but takes longer to digest. And therefore, the glucose that is released from starch enters the blood slowly, which is good. And further, starch is generally consumed as a part of food grains, where it has the company of some protein, fat, and several other nutrients. So it's a package deal. On the other hand, sugar is very quickly digested, and the simple sugars that are released from it are quickly sent into the bloodstream, which becomes a little difficult for the body to handle quickly, and therefore it's not the best way to uh, for the carbohydrate to enter the blood. And secondly, sugar is 100% carbohydrate. That type of purity is not desirable here. We want a mixture of nutrients, and food grains provide that automatically. Of course, you'll say that sugar also is not generally consumed as lumps of sugar. We take it with something else. That, of course, is very good. But all the same, sugar by itself is just carbohydrate and nothing else. Another thing is that some sugar would be left behind in the mouth whenever we eat some sweet. And if it is left beyond a few minutes, it starts getting fermented. And that in turn, fermented by the germs in the mouth. That in turn leads to formation of acid, which increases the risk for getting cavities in the teeth. And therefore, from all points of view, one can say that starch is much better than sugar. However, we can't give up sugar completely. Most of us can't easily give it up. And there is an upper limit prescribed, and that is quite liberal. That is 10% of the energy intake may come from sugar, up to 10%. I'm not saying that we need that much sugar. We can do completely without sugar. Uh, we have lived healthy lives before it became technologically possible to manufacture sugar. But all I'm saying is that if we do want to take sugar, there's an permissible upper limit, and less the better. We don't have to go to that upper limit. Okay. Another important thing in relation to carbohydrates is dietary fiber. Dietary fiber is a close cousin of carbohydrates. It's in fact a heterogeneous group of chemicals which are found in plants. And the important thing is that all these chemicals are not digested by the enzymes, the digestive juices present in the gastrointestinal tract, in the stomach and the intestines. So they do not get digested. So what use it is to take them if they do not get digested? They still serve a very important purpose. And the purpose they serve is that they provide bulk in the intestine that prevents constipation. And now we know that dietary fiber also has many metabolic effects. It helps in maintaining blood sugar levels normal, blood cholesterol levels normal, and therefore it has a role to play in preventing some of the common lifestyle diseases such as diabetes and hypertension and heart disease. So we do need dietary fiber. And where do we get it from? We get it from the seed coat of the food grains as well as from fruits and vegetables. So uh, if we should take plenty of food grains, but then at the same time, we can take them in either an unrefined form, that is with the seed coat intact, taking them as nature packed these grains for us with a lot of love. Or we can interfere, remove the seed coat, and get the refined grain. For example, whole wheat or dalia or porridge, what we make from, what we make porridge from. Now, that is just wheat broken into small bits. So that has all the seed coat intact. Semolina, suji, that also has quite a bit of fiber left in it. Flour, if we don't refine it too much, that also will have quite a bit of fiber left in it. But if we refine it completely and get white flour, what we call maida, that will be totally refined. That will be devoid of dietary fiber. So not only we'll lose dietary fiber if we refine the food grain, we also lose quite a bit of vitamins and minerals, which also are concentrated in the seed coat. So seed coat is a packing, the packing which of the grains, and nature has packed it with a lot of love for us. And the wrapping paper here is not to be discarded. It's best to consume the grain with the wrapping paper, which is dietary fiber. You might say that, well, we can get fiber also from fruits and vegetables. That is true. But chemically speaking, the type of fiber which we get from food grains is different from the fiber that we get from fruits and vegetables. And we need both types. They have somewhat distinct functions. So get fiber from grains. Best thing is to get fiber from food grains and to get it also from fruits and vegetables. And quantitatively speaking, we'll get much more dietary fiber from food grains than from fruits and vegetables, because fruits and vegetables, in any case, we don't consume in that much quantity. And secondly, 80 to 90% of every fruit and vegetable is water. So there's very little scope for any other nutrient to be present in them. Of course, no, I'm not, we'll come to fruits and vegetables later on, but what I'm trying to emphasize here is that one should not try to depend upon fruits and vegetables for dietary fiber. Do consume fruits and vegetables by all means, and we'll come to them, their importance later. But that doesn't mean that we can take refined food grains, take grains as unrefined as possible with the seed coat intact. The next nutrient we'll turn to is proteins. Unlike carbohydrate, protein is an overrated nutrient. We do need some protein, but more than what we need doesn't do any good to us. Uh, like the carbohydrates, proteins can also give us energy, and they give us 4 calories per gram, the same as the carbohydrates. But the ideal arrangement would be that we do not use these proteins for getting energy, and the body has inbuilt mechanisms for preferring carbohydrate as fuel as compared to protein. But if we have surplus of protein, then it may get utilized as protein, or if you're not taking enough food, then again protein may get utilized as fuel. So protein can be used as fuel, but then it will be like burning furniture in the house instead of wood. So that is not desirable. So, but at the same time, when we measure protein, we very often measure it in terms of the calories it will provide. So it can provide, protein can provide us 4 calories for each gram of protein consumed. Sources: food grains, once again, cereals and pulses. And apart from that, milk and non-vegetarian foods, egg, meat, fish, etc. These are all sources of protein. How much protein do we need? That we shall see in a moment, because that needs a little detailed consideration. But before that, once again, let me emphasize the sources of protein. The Among the food grains, the sources of protein are both cereals and pulses. Cereals provide about 10% of by weight, and pulses about 20% by weight is protein. Soybean is an exception, which provides 40%, but that doesn't mean that we should prefer soybean to other pulses, because even 20% is quite enough, as we shall see. Of course, soybean is a perfectly acceptable food, but what I'm trying to say is that don't take soybean just because you think that otherwise we may not get enough protein. We can get enough protein from a combination of a wide variety of cereals and pulses. Now, how much protein do we need? An adult needs about 1 gram per kilogram body weight, or 10% of the energy intake, which comes to more or less the same thing. Suppose there's a 50 kilo adult, then this adult would need, in terms of if it is 1 gram per kilogram body weight, the 50 kilo adult will need 50 grams of protein. On the other hand, if this adult uh, takes 2000 calories in terms of energy, and then 10% of 2000 will be 200, and 200 grams of calories will again come from 50 grams of protein, because each gram provides 4 calories, so 50 grams will provide 200 calories. So whether it is 200 calories or 10% of energy intake or 50 grams of protein, they all come to exactly the same thing. So this sort of roughly tells us that an adult should take 50 to 60 grams of protein in a day, to some extent depending on the body weight of the person. Now, how much protein do we need? We saw that we need 10% of the energy intake in the form of protein. Now, Cereals provide about 10% of their weight in the form of protein, and pulses about 20%. So if you have a mixture of the two, it will automatically provide more than 10% of the energy intake. So if much of our energy is coming from a mixture of cereals and pulses, which is the case in case of Indian diets and many other traditional diets like say the Chinese diet having rice and soybean, or the Latin American diets having corn and beans. All these traditional cultures found out through trial and error that this is an excellent combination. So if we have a combination of cereals and pulses as our staple food, which is providing most of the energy that we take from food, then it will automatically provide more than 10% of the energy intake in the form of protein. You may say, well, that may be true for adults, but how about children? They are growing, so they need more protein. Yes, they do, but they also need more energy for growth as well as for running around, which they do quite a lot. And therefore, so far as the percentage of energy intake which they should take in the form of protein remains exactly the same for children as for adults. So children also need about 10% of their energy intake in the form of protein. Adults also do the same 10% of their energy intake. The only thing is, on a per kg body weight basis, the children need more energy as well as more protein. So they do need more in terms of their body weight. They're very little, but they need a lot. That's why children at the age of 2 sometimes are surprise us how much can this little child eat. It's particularly between the age of 2 to 5 when they're growing up very fast. We are surprised to see such a little child eating so much. That's because they need that, and that gives them the additional energy they need. And if they take this through again a combination of cereals and pulses, it will also give them that additional protein that they need. So the percentage of energy intake which children need from proteins is more or less exactly the same as case of adults. But then you'll say it's not just the quantity of protein. In case of proteins, quality is also important. Yes, agreed. And like carbohydrates and fats, all proteins are also not alike. They're not alike in terms of quality. Plant proteins are poorer in quality as compared to animal proteins. Agreed. But then they are poor in different respects. Cereal proteins are poor quality in one way, pulse proteins in another way. And if we combine the two, they complement each other. And we get a good quality protein. Something like, if some of you saw that film, Dosti means friendship. It was a Hindi film. By the title, in one of the friends could not see, and the other friend was lame, could not walk properly. And but the two together made a good team, and they could do everything that they wanted to do. So cereals and pulses also together can give us a good quality protein because they're deficient essential amino acids, the limiting amino acids, which are deficient in the two, are different. Cereals are deficient in lysine in general and pulses in methionine. So the lysine deficiency of cereals is made up by the pulses, and the methionine deficiency of pulses is made up by the cereals, and the two together give us a good quality protein. So don't get carried away by advertisements like this. All advertisements are motivated by profit. Although without saying so, this advertisement seems to imply that if you want 60 grams of protein in a day, you'll have to take 300 grams of almonds. Yes, 300 grams of almonds do provide 60 grams of protein. So the maths is right. But then they are saying it as if, since you cannot eat 300 grams of almonds in a day, might as well take a protein supplement. Now, where are all the cereals and pulses gone? They're not talking about it. Huh? So don't get carried away by ads like this. Now we come to the traditional nutrients. Among the traditional nutrients, the third one, that is fats. Fats are a calorie-dense nutrient. Unlike carbohydrates and proteins, which provide 9 calories per gram, unlike carbohydrates and proteins, which provide 4 calories per gram, fats provide 9 calories per gram. And that's why foods which have more fat can quickly give us much more energy and we can grow fat. Now, that is one of the sort of risks of eating high sugar and high fat foods, because sugar also uh, enters the food surreptitiously. It's not always very obvious. and it makes the food more palatable. Fats also very often make the food more palatable, and the result is that it becomes a double disaster. On one hand, both sugar and fats contribute to the caloric intake, and on the other, we are more likely to eat that food in larger quantities. We are more likely to eat more of that food because now it has become more palatable. So that is the difficulty. But if we can keep this in mind and still take no more energy than we need, then by themselves, neither fats are fattening nor sugar is fattening. In fact, if we take more of any nutrient in excess, so that our energy intake is more than our requirements, we will put on fat. For example, animals can put on fat, not those which graze on grass. These animals can put on fat by eating grass, and grass certainly contains no fat, and grass doesn't contain any sugar either. And yet they can put on weight. So the important thing is eating more than we need. But all the same, we can see that how sugar and fats can make it very easy for us to consume much more than we need. Among the sources of fats, we have, of course, the visible fat in the form of butter, ghee, and various oils. And we also have invisible fat, which in small quantities is present in just about every food grain and fruit and vegetable. So, a large number of fruits and vegetables, and of course, all the food grains have a small amount of fat which is invisible. And that is what sort of makes it easy for us to answer in one way. How much fat do we need? We need no visible fat. So even if we had no visible fat at all in the diet, the invisible fat will take care of the minimum amount of fat that we need. But once again, as in case of sugar, I'm not saying we should not take fat. We can take a modest amount of fat, and that modest amount is less than 30% of the energy intake. But then, and as in case of carbohydrates and proteins, all fats are also not alike. Now, here is a little complex chemistry involved, so we'll not get into it. But take it from me that on the basis of this chemistry, what we find is that the recommended fats are mustard oil, canola oil, and soybean oil, because these are the only three oils which provide us what you might have heard of omega 3 or N3 type of fatty acids, which are essential. And no other vegetable oil provides us these. And along with this, we can also take a small amount of butter and ghee. So that sort of more or less fits into the current recommendations for which fats we should have. One of these as the principal cooking medium, plus a small amount of either butter or ghee. And Ayurvedic wisdom would tell us that ghee is better than butter. Now, a close cousin of fats, cholesterol. And sometimes, we find among people a great deal of cholesterol phobia, fear of cholesterol, as if it's a poison. Cholesterol is not a poison. It's a normal constituent of the body. Our cell membranes are made up of it. So many hormones utilize cholesterol as the raw material. So much of cholesterol forms a raw material in the nervous system. So cholesterol is not a poison. It's a normal component of the body. It has important metabolic functions, including getting included in the cell membranes. So cholesterol is not a poison, and so for some amount taken in the diet will also not do us any harm. The important thing is that the amount of cholesterol that we need can be all manufactured by the body. And therefore, we need not take it in the diet. But at the same time, if we do take it in the diet up to a certain limit, the body has mechanisms for cutting down on the manufacturing of cholesterol within the body. So that mechanism also the body has, so that if we take some cholesterol in the diet, the body will manufacture less. If we take less cholesterol in the diet, the body will manufacture more. Now, one blanket statement which can help here is that no plant food contains any cholesterol. And there, if we take a strictly vegetarian diet, which does not even have any milk or milk products, it will have no cholesterol at all in the diet. Okay. So, just to emphasize this point, uh, I might add that cashew nuts have no cholesterol, almonds have no cholesterol, walnuts have no cholesterol, coconut oil doesn't have any cholesterol, groundnut oil has no cholesterol, sunflower oil has no cholesterol. So all these oils, coconut oil, groundnut oil, sunflower oil, are zero cholesterol oils. They contain no cholesterol. Cashew nuts, almonds, and walnuts, these are also plant products. Plants plant foods, and therefore they have no cholesterol. No plant food contains any cholesterol. A blanket statement which makes it so simple. And we also should remember that dietary cholesterol is only one of the factors that affect blood cholesterol. So, blood cholesterol and dietary cholesterol are two different things. It is blood cholesterol which is one of the risk factors for heart disease. Dietary cholesterol is only one of the factors that can influence blood cholesterol. If dietary cholesterol crosses a certain limit, then it can raise blood cholesterol. And what is that limit? That limit more or less can be defined in terms of, uh, say, the cholesterol content of one egg. One egg is about 250 milligrams of cholesterol. And for most people, not all people, some people may not tolerate even that. But for most people, that much cholesterol is quite compatible with maintaining normal blood cholesterol levels. And at the same time, blood cholesterol is only one of the factors. Sorry, dietary cholesterol is only one of the factors that affect blood cholesterol, and blood cholesterol is only one of the risk factors for heart disease, which means that some risk factors for heart disease do not work through blood cholesterol. So a person may have a low blood cholesterol level and yet get heart disease. So, which are the other factors which are important? All the lifestyle factors, other things that we eat. Most important, what is the total quantity of food that we eat? So, if we eat more than we need, we put on weight. And obesity is one of the most important risk factors for all these lifestyle diseases. It's the mother of all lifestyle diseases. Apart from that, less of exercise, smoking, drinking, not sleeping enough, and mental stress. Now, these are the other factors that affect blood cholesterol and also increase the risk for lifestyle diseases. So it's a complex thing. We have to pay attention to each one of them to some extent if we want to stay free from lifestyle diseases. So emphasizing only one factor like dietary cholesterol or blood cholesterol is not really adequate. It's not appropriate. Then we go to the next two traditional nutrients, vitamins and minerals. And the reason why I've clubbed them is together is that one thing in common to them is that they do not provide energy. The energy giving nutrients are three: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Neither vitamins nor minerals they give us energy. But all the same, we do need them, and we need them in small quantities. So these are micronutrients as compared to carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, which are macronutrients. We need them in large quantities. So we need vitamins and minerals in small quantities. They don't give any energy, and still we need them. Because you see, for making fire, we don't need just fuel, we also need a matchstick. So you can say that vitamins and minerals are that matchstick which help us in utilizing the fuel. So we do need them. We need them in small quantities. And the reason I have clubbed them is because they come from the same sources. And the major source is fruits and vegetables. So take a variety of fruits and vegetables in enough quantity, and the vitamin and mineral intake will take care of itself. Some vitamins and minerals will come also from the seed coat of the food grains, but that may not be enough. It's important to take also fruits and vegetables, and in addition, spices, which we shall come to very soon. The next traditional nutrient is water. Now, how much water should we take, and why should we take it? Well, water is an important thing that we need, and how much we need depends upon the weather, depends upon whether we are exposed to the heat if it is hot weather, and how much physical activity we are undertaking and losing sweat through exercise. No, these are all things. So, water intake has to be balanced with the water that we are losing in urine and in sweat. So basically, how much water we need can be quite variable, but as a rule of the thumb, 1.5 to 2 liters per day for an adult meets the requirements most of the time. Uh, and of course, the body has inbuilt mechanisms for giving us some indication of how much water to take. And the two best indicators are thirst and the color of the urine. So if we are thirsty, it indicates we need water, but then we don't have to wait for thirst, particularly in winters. In winters, somehow we feel less thirsty, but doesn't mean we don't need enough water. We need quite a bit of water even in winters. So, but thirst gives us some indication. The other indicator is the color of the urine. And if the urine gets yellow, it again means that we do need to take more water. But once again, this indicator may not work in winters, because in winters, even if we take less water, the urine may still remain quite white or colorless. Actually, urine is never white; it's colorless. But anyway, we sometimes call it white urine. So anyway, uh, we can to some extent be guided by thirst and the color of the urine, but in winters particularly, it's easy to get dehydrated. And also it's easy to get dehydrated in summers if we are exposed to the heat, if we are out in the heat, if we are taking exercise in the heat, and for some reason we neglect water intake, then we can get dehydrated also in summers. So summer or winter, we need to pay attention to water intake and not wait for the thirst or the color of the urine to tell us. A little excess will do no harm. At the same time, taking less can do us harm, because a concentrated urine, that is a very yellow urine, increases the risk for two common diseases of the urinary tract. One is stones, because the more concentrated the urine, the more the salts in it are likely to crystallize. And then uh, the rest of the minerals and other things can uh, gather around these crystals and form a stone. So it increases the risk for forming stones in the urinary tract. A yellow urine or a concentrated urine also has more food available for germs, and therefore it also increases the risk of urinary tract infection. And these are the two commonest uh, ailments of the urinary tract: stones and urinary tract infection. And both can be prevented by taking sufficient water. And that's why, when it comes to the treatment, also, when a person has either of these diseases, one of the things that the person is always told to take plenty of water. But it's better to take plenty of water as a preventive rather than to treat these diseases. Prevention is always easier and better than cure. So now these are the two traditional functions of food: to provide us energy and to build the body for repair of wear and tear. But now has come new knowledge which has shown us that the nutrients are confined not to just these six traditional nutrients, and the functions of food are also not confined to just to these two functions. The new knowledge tells us that the nutrients are not just six, but much more than six, and could be in hundreds. Not all of them have been identified. They're all present in very small amounts. And incidentally, these chemicals are sometimes called phytochemicals, because most of them are present in plants. Phyto means plant, so they are called phytochemicals. And all these phytochemicals are good for health, which means that plant foods are giving us a lot, even apart from the traditional nutrients that we have talked about. For these traditional nutrients, plant foods can give us enough and everything that we need, that we saw. But then, apart from that, even when it comes to these new nutrients, plant foods can provide all of them. So, nutrients could be in hundreds. And what are their functions? Their functions extend beyond these two traditional functions. Their function is in terms of preventing and treating disease, something which traditional wisdom always had. Ayurveda has emphasized a lot the role of diet in prevention and treatment of disease. And Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, also said, let your food be your medicine. So, using food for treating disease, and of course for preventing disease, which is always better and easier and cheaper than cure, is has been traditionally an important function of the diet. And we find that that function is an important function and could reside apart from the rest of the traditional nutrients. For that, these new nutrients which are being identified, and many have already been identified, these phytochemicals are important. And how much is the requirement? The requirement of whether it's vitamins and minerals or whether it is these new nutrients. The requirement for optimum health may be more than for preventing deficiency, because the traditional way for determining, say, the requirement of a vitamin was to see how much is enough to prevent deficiency. But it has now been found that a little more than that may be important or good for us, because what we need for optimum health uh, is generally a little more than what is required for preventing deficiency. And of course, when it comes to these nutrients, we don't know the exact amount that we need, but incidentally, we don't need each one of these hundreds. So we don't have to look for the amount of each of these that we need and amount of each one of these I take, because they have overlapping functions. And what are the functions that they have? The functions that they have are like being anti-infective, so help protecting us from infections, anti-tumor, helping us prevent cancers, and immuno-enhancing, they enhance our immunity, which could be one way in which they prevent infections and cancers, and antioxidant function, which is also one way in which they could enhance immunity. So all these are correlated, and these functions, all these nutrients have, and they have overlapping functions. So basically, that is how these nutrients, by enhancing our immunity, by acting as antioxidants, and in terms of direct effects, preventing infections and preventing cancer. All these are in fact interrelated. The root sort of is at the level of the antioxidant function, which in turn helps improve a lot of functions in the body, some of which important ones make themselves visible through our immunity, through cancers, through infections, and so on. So we need them. But then, since each one of them is not necessary individually, we need enough quantity of them. So what we need is a variety of foods which contain these nutrients in enough quantities. If we take a variety of those, we'll get a variety of phytochemicals, and that should be enough. So the simple solution to the uh, getting enough of or not getting deficient in these phytonutrients is to eat more of the foods that have a high concentration of nutrients. And these are the foods that might otherwise get generally neglected. And in this category are fruits and vegetables, which get neglected. So apart from vitamins, minerals, and fiber, which fruits and vegetables give, they also give us plenty of these phytochemicals. So don't neglect the fruits and vegetables. And of course, don't neglect the humble spices. Spices are not in the food only for taste and flavor. Spices contribute in an important way to our antioxidant intake, or you might say the intake of all these phytochemicals. They are a very concentrated source because they're very dry, hardly any water content. And that's why their shelf life is also long. And they provide us a variety of these phytochemicals. And therefore, spices also should be consumed in moderation. Now, how about these studies which tell us that to prevent cancer and other lifestyle diseases, take plenty of nuts or take plenty of green tea or coffee? Now, all these studies are true, but they tell us only a part of the truth. What they emphasize is that these are the foods that contain these antioxidants. But then these are not the only sources of antioxidants that we have. And speaking the truth and speaking part of the truth makes all the difference. These are studies which are done by those who have a motive of making profit if these products sell in larger amounts. I'm not saying these are undesirable or unacceptable nutrients. Take as much nuts as you can. They have plenty of good qualities. They are a healthy food. But then we are not dependent upon nuts and green tea and coffee and foods like that for preventing disease. Taking plenty of fruits and vegetables, a variety of fruits and vegetables, and a variety of spices in moderation will also do it. Here's another advertisement which can be misleading. This advertisement was published more than 30 years ago, but all the same, I think it remains relevant because the advertising techniques have a way of, misguiding us without saying anything wrong. So they are legally sort of quite correct in what they say. Now, what this advertisement had was these small stamp size pictures of a number of young boys and girls, and underneath was written which was the exam in which they topped or had a very good rank. So all these children had done extremely well academically in some exam or the other. And then along with that was written that all these children had taken the food supplement that was being advertised. Now, the ranks that these children got is true. All these children took the supplement, that was also true. They had data on these children. But why this advertisement was still misleading is because it told only small part of the truth. The other part of the truth, which probably they didn't even care to investigate, would be that if you at random ask thousands of children, not just a few, whether they took or did not take the supplement, and then see how these children did in the exam, you will find a very large number who did not take the supplement and still did very well in the exam. And you'll also find a large number who took the supplement and did very poorly in the exams. Now, all that data has been not only hidden, perhaps that data was not even collected because the supplement manufacturers were not interested in that data. And but at the same time, we can using common sense, we can easily see that that is what would have been, which means that if you collected data on thousands of children, there would have been no correlation between taking the supplement and academic performance. Further, if you look at the composition of that supplement, there's nothing in it for which there's any evidence available that any of the substances present in it, which was basically nutrients, that any of the nutrients present in it are directly related to academic performance. There's no correlation. In any case, one of the fundamental things in science also is that correlation does not prove a cause and effect relationship. But forget about that. The important thing is that if you have enough data, you would easily see that many children who took the supplement did very poorly, and many who did not take the supplement did very well in the exams. So one doesn't have to get carried away. One has to use one's own critical faculties to assess an advertisement. Now, here is a sort of a summing up of what a balanced, healthy diet should be. It should be a vegetarian diet, at least predominantly so, if not exclusively so. The staples in the diet should be a combination of cereals and pulses, unrefined as far as possible. And what should be the proportion? To get good quality protein from cereals and pulses, approximately 5:1. That 5 parts of cereal, 1 part pulses. So if one takes half a kilo of cereals in a day, which is not unrealistic, one should take about 100 grams of pulses or dals in a day. That will give us enough of protein and a good quality protein. Then, when it comes to visible fat, we should take a judiciously chosen fat or a combination of fats. And we saw that essentially is one of those oils, mustard, canola, or soya bean, and a modest quantity of ghee or butter. And fruits and vegetables, as a rule of the thumb, 5 helpings a day. So 4 to 5 helpings of fruits and vegetables in a day is desirable, and it's not as difficult as it looks. If we take, say, a fruit midday between breakfast and lunch, some salad at lunch, some fruit between lunch and dinner, and some salad at dinner. That will give us 5 helpings. Some people say that since Indian diets are predominantly vegetarian, we don't even have to go for 5 helpings if we are taking enough of cooked fruits and vegetables, which also has a point. But still, if we keep our goal at 5, probably we'll end up taking at least 2 or 3 helpings. So that's what is important. And on the whole, uh, our intake of fruits and vegetables is low, not only because they are expensive, but also because they are not very palatable. And they are not an item in the diet which we consider very essential. And also, they are difficult to chew sometimes, and therefore they take a lot of time to eat, and we want to finish our meal quickly. So these are some of the reasons why fruits and vegetables are a neglected item. It's important to keep in mind that for vitamins, minerals, and various other phytochemicals, and also for a particular type of dietary fiber, which we call water soluble dietary fiber, for all that, fruits and vegetables are required. Cooked, uncooked, whatever. But at least 5 helpings, cooked plus uncooked, you might say, even that will be enough. And one can use only vegetables instead of fruits because, nutritionally speaking, there's hardly any difference between fruits and vegetables. They are the same. And in fact, in common language, also sometimes we use different words for the same. For example, sometimes tomato is considered a vegetable and sometimes a fruit. Then milk and milk products in moderation, especially in vegetarian diets, as a source of vitamin B12. Not so much for calcium. We can get enough calcium from other sources, but all the same, milk and milk products in moderation, if you're accustomed to them, that can continue. And spices in moderation, we have seen they are important. They are not just for fragrance and taste. The first book that I wrote got published under the title Eating Scientifically in 1974. This book has happily been out of print for a long time. Why happily so? Because it was called Eating Scientifically, and a lot of scientific information in this book was wrong. It has been revised. Secondly, it talked only about the scientific information, not about things which go beyond science. And that is what is reflected in this more recent book, which continues to be in print, Eating Wisely and Well. So, eating wisely and well goes beyond eating scientifically. And what is it that makes it go beyond eating scientifically? Scientifically, we emphasize what to eat and how much to eat. But when it comes to eating wisely and well, it also includes how to eat. And what is important for this is comes beautifully in this quote from Sri Aurobindo. Do not trouble your mind about food. Take it in the right quantity, neither too much nor too little, without greed or repulsion. That is, not feeling that I don't like it, but for the sake of preventing disease, I have to take it. That is repulsion. So, or I like this food very much, so let me take one more helping just because I like it very much. So, take food without greed or repulsion, neither starve yourself nor take in excess. So, neither too much food nor too little, without greed or repulsion, as the means given to you by the mother for the maintenance of the body. So, don't forget the fundamental purpose of the food is to maintain the body, which is our instrument for fulfilling the divine will in the world. So, that is taking it in the right spirit, offering it to the divine in you, and then you'll find it will not create tamas, it will not create laziness. Laziness comes from too much of food. Even if you're eating everything right, if you eat out of greed, taking too much of any type of food increases tamas or laziness. And offering it to the divine, not only because the work that it will do has to be offered to the divine, but also because the story doesn't end with eating, it also has to be digested and utilized. And that itself is a great miracle. How food is converted into fuel for the body as well as new material, that itself is a miracle. And that is what possible because of the infinite intelligence of the divine planted in every cell of the body. So offer it to the divine so that it is digested well, utilized well, and it does not create and is utilized for the work which we are doing for the divine. It's much better to eat the meal in silence or at any rate in quietness. So it may not be possible to eat it always in total silence, but you should be at peace. Your mind should be quiet while eating. So to sum up, we should eat mindfully. And this has basically three components: eat with a sense of gratitude, eat in an atmosphere of peace, and eat consciously. If you eat consciously, even if you're taking something which is very palatable, you like it very much, you'll find that if you eat consciously, you will not be able to overeat. Because if you're eating consciously, after some time you'll feel that, well, I've had enough. You've relished it enough. Because consciously will include relishing every bite that you are taking. Unconsciously, you just go on gobbling it. And then you realize that, oh, the first helping is over. I haven't really tasted enough of it. Let me get one more helping. That happens because the first helping was just gobbled up. It went into the body without passing through your mind. You did not really relish it. So, one way of reminding ourselves that we should eat consciously and with a sense of gratitude is to start eating with a prayer. And some of the components of the prayer can be gratitude. Gratitude not only for the food, but also gratitude for the capacity to digest and utilize the food. So many people have food available, but because of an illness, they can't eat. They are in the ICU. They are being fed through a tube. They can't eat. So, gratitude for being able to eat and gratitude for being able to utilize that food. A person with diabetes can't utilize the food properly. And that's why he needs aid in the form of insulin or oral hypoglycemics. He can't utilize the food properly. So, utilizing the eating the food, digesting the food, utilizing the food, all this calls for gratitude, apart from, of course, getting the food itself. Then during the prayer, we can remind ourselves, I'm eating for need, not for greed. I'm eating to keep the body, that is this instrument, in good shape, not for taste. The primary purpose of food is to maintain this bodily instrument in a good shape so that it can fulfill the divine will in the world. So this is how to eat. And then, of course, we can end the meal also with gratitude. Because gratitude is a very short prayer, and yet it is more or less a complete prayer. We'll not get into Ayurvedic wisdom in relation to food, but then a lot of Ayurvedic wisdom doesn't find any place in modern science on which this session was primarily based. But that doesn't mean that what is not there in modern science is not important. Ayurvedic wisdom tells us how to individualize the food according to the way an individual is constituted. It tells us how to vary the food according to season. It tells us how, how to vary each meal depending upon the time of the day. For example, curd should not be taken at night. Which should be the heaviest meal of the day? Which should be lunch? And Ayurvedic wisdom also tells us uh, how to modify the diet in disease. It also tells us which are the foods which should not be combined at the same meal. For example, salt and milk. Any salty food and milk should not be combined. This type of combinations are what Ayurveda calls viruddha ahar. That is, they are incompatible, they are hostile to each other, these combinations. So they should not be taken, and so on. So there's a lot of Ayurvedic wisdom which doesn't find any place in modern science, but it is a part of traditional wisdom in India. Some of it we have inherited uh, from our ancestors, and luckily it has still survived. But then the world now is showing renewed interest in ancient Indian wisdom, including Ayurveda. And I'm sure with that, greater acceptance as well as more clarity and knowledge in this area will emerge as time goes on. But till then, we can depend upon our instincts and whatever traditional knowledge we already have inherited, and also find it from other sources. Plenty of it is available on the internet now. So go to good authentic sources on the internet if you have any doubts about Ayurveda, or ask a good Ayurvedic physician about it. So these are the ways in which we can utilize this ancient Indian wisdom to eat wisely and well, because Ayurveda also has a lot to tell us about how to eat, not just what to eat, how much to eat, but also how to eat. It's a complete science which takes into account not just the body and the mind, but also the soul, which is what eating well is about. When we say talk with gratitude, eat with gratitude, eat consciously, eat mindfully, we are essentially thinking of not just the body and the mind, but also our soul. And that is what resides in Ayurvedic wisdom. But due to shortage of time in this session, we'll not get into more details on this. And of course, if you have any inquiries, any questions, you are welcome to write to me on this email address, rambijwork@gmail.com. And these are two YouTube channels on which those who are viewing this video will find plenty of material of interest. The YouTube channel of Sri Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch, and the Yes Spirituality YouTube channel. In Yes Spirituality, Yes stands for Yoga, Education, and Spirituality. And it's a single word that we have coined, uh, in which the same S serves for both yes and spirituality. Thank you all for being there.
Sir, if you can highlight and explain a bit about more about antioxidants, because the name sounds that it is something good because it carries oxygen, but uh, how is why go anti-oxygen? That's my
Yeah,
question.
that's a good question, because we do need oxygen, and yet we are saying that we should take something which is antioxidant.
Right.
That is because for the oxidation that is necessary in the body, there's a price to be paid. While we are utilizing the oxygen for making use of the fuel, it is also damaging to some extent the various nutrients in the various components of the cells, including the nucleic acids and the fats. So many of the essential components in the cell membranes and in the nucleus are getting damaged. And that is one of the sort of thought to be reasons why we age slowly, we grow older. That's one of the things that is contributing to aging, apart from, of course, if the the oxidant damage is too much, then it can lead to various diseases. So that is why we need antioxidants. Of course, there are some endogenous antioxidant mechanisms built into the body. The body, as if it knows that this is what will happen, and so the body has inbuilt antioxidants. But then these have to be supplemented with antioxidants which we are taking in the diet. So they are basically to prevent this damage, which will slow down aging, reduce disease. And when it comes to aging, I might add that although I emphasize that we need a certain amount of protein, too much will not do us any good. There are also some indications that if we take far in excess of all our requirements, even protein can accelerate aging. And also, apart from that, since protein leads to formation of urea, which has to be eliminated by the kidney, it can also increase the load on the kidney, which might increase the risk for getting kidney disease relatively early in life. So that's the excess protein. And of course, we need antioxidants in general for a very preventing a very wide variety of diseases and aging, which means in general, you can say for good health, we need to prevent the damage which oxidation is doing inadvertently in the body, because that's a little price to pay for uh, the very process of being alive being dependent on oxidation.
Understood.
And the sort of species which it gives rise to are called reactive oxygen species. So
Okay.
reactive oxygen species are the ones which cause this damage. Ruchi, do you have any other question?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, then. Thank you so much. And thank you, viewers.